Hello and welcome to Coffee with Craig. If you've not been here before, this is where I go live randomly and people come online and ask me questions. And today the topic is going to be all about China again. And when is the end going to come for the Chinese Communist Party? Well, hi again and welcome to Coffee with Craig. And this is when I say I go live and some guests I'm sure will be joining me soon to ask me some questions. But my thoughts today go out about the communist in China, the Chinese Communist Party. Now, I've spoken a lot about China. And I've spoken about China for a long time, about my thoughts about what will happen for the future of China, because let's face it, China has become probably the most dominant country in the world in many respects, because it influences the politics of everybody. It influences the politics of America. It influences what's going on in Europe, whether we become a union or not. It's all about, can we stand up to China, isn't it? And we're right in a very difficult position at the moment with China. And as I've said, I've predicted the troubles that were going to happen here about Taiwan. And this seems to be happening, certainly recently, with Pelosi going out there. And there's more to come. And I want to sort of express a few thoughts about this. And of course, reference some of the other things I've already said about China and where I think it's going to go and what's going to happen to it. Now, I think we're now at a very critical point. You remember, if you've been following my predictions, that I have talked that there will come about a revolution in China. Now, I've spoken a lot about this and a lot about the ways it will happen and how it will happen. One of the things with all of us psychics is it's very difficult to predict the whens. But I get the feeling that right now is going to be a really critical time. Now, I said that I said at the beginning of the year that Xi Jinping would have troubles this year, particularly with his grasp of trying to do a third term in power. Now, I see in the news that he's hoping for his coronation soon. But there seems to be already a bit of a division in the Communist Party from what we know, because these things are all done secretly behind closed doors. Nobody actually ever gets to elect the leader of China. This is done by a select few. And I don't think it's going to be easy for him. And I think actually I don't think he will get elected ultimately. I feel this in the coming months, there's going to be a full challenge to his powers. And somebody else is going to take control of China. Now, that might seem optimistic, but I think the next person that follows him will be even worse, because I'm seeing really big crackdowns in China coming soon. They've already got their problems. These were things that I've spoken about in other videos, but also things I predicted going back quite some years now, that there would be a major slump in the Chinese economy. Now, we're just on the edge of that. The Chinese economy is not in a huge slump at the moment, but it's not doing well. And on top of that, they've got all sorts of serious corruption problems, particularly around the mortgages, which I've spoken about before, and particularly the misuse of lockdowns. People might also say there's been a lot of misuse of lockdowns around the world. But in China, there's been the zero COVID policy. Now, people have already been resisting this, but I think this is going to start to escalate. And They tried to take people's attention away from the internal troubles by again focusing on Taiwan. So we're going to get more troubles with Taiwan because the leadership wants to stay in control. So if you've got troubles at home, the best thing to do is to take the distraction elsewhere. I think a lot of this also happened, and I don't know how you guys feel about this. I'll take some questions from you in a minute. I'll just say hello to everybody that's joining me at the moment. I'm going to connect you in a moment, but I'm just going to give you my first thoughts. But one of the issues I think with the coronavirus is it makes me wonder if that could have even been used as a way of stopping the revolutions in potential revolutions coming from Hong Kong, because funnily it went quiet with the umbrella protests, didn't it, just after the COVID came out. Good reason that everybody has to stay indoors. They're using the same policy now, perhaps, or certainly using a version of it, and maybe there's a bit of karma coming back on them there, because I think nothing's been really addressed about what was done with all the release of COVID from the labs in China, which I think we're all completely convinced about, not just us fringe people, but also people all over the world begin to think that. So we're in a critical time, and a time actually seeing when Gorbachev died as well. He was a great light in the world at the time, because he was the first person to bring in perestroika, I pronounced it wrong, and right, freedom and bringing down the Berlin Wall, and great hope for the Western world, too, because we all thought we could deal with Russia, and for a short time we could. And we got left in power two rather dangerous leaders, in Putin and of course in Xi Jinping. In this day and age, I still find it incredible that we can have two what I would call dictators like this in such positions. It's incredible that with all modern technology and communications and the modern age, we still have this sort of 1984 style leadership there. Anyway, so I'm seeing that Xi Jinping is not going to have the coronation that he thinks he's going to have. And I'm seeing a new leader in China who will be a worse leader. But I don't think he'll be a leader for long, because I feel the revolution in China, I really think, is coming soon. I think we're close to it now. They've got a stalling economy. I read somewhere that one of the slogans that was used in Tiananmen Square has started being pasted up on walls and sprayed on walls in China. Give me liberty or give me death, it says in English. But, to actually take the chance of spraying that on a wall, you really have to stick your neck out. So I think we're going to start to see real serious rumbles there. The press is going to come alight with this very soon. There's not much. There's a bit in the press, but there's not much. So again, I reference all my earlier predictions about the disarray that would happen in China. And I also feel that we're going to eventually, and it's not going to be just around the corner, it's going to be a battle, but I feel that we will eventually see the demise of the Chinese Communist Party. And what will that bring? What could it bring? I think there's hope in this, because although obviously something like that would bring a lot of suffering, because it's bound to, these changeovers don't happen easily. But I think with the right, because the Chinese people are terrified about standing up to their leaders, so we're told. But who knows? They did it once before, and they could perhaps do it again. And what will follow it? Well, some of the positive thoughts I have about this is I think we would see the freedom of Tibet. I do think we would see a greater autonomy, genuine autonomy to Hong Kong. I think we would see the final freedom and recognition of Taiwan as its own nation. And we would see a greatly weakened Russia, because Putin, if China gets in trouble, would find it much more hard to stay in position. A lot of this could be, couldn't it? A friend of mine said to me that, what's happening in China, it could be the bad karma that they've created for what they've just done to the Dalai Lama, a very high spiritual avatar type character, and what would that mean to do those terrible spiritual sins to the great teachings of the world? The same too, what they did with Taoism in China, with the Cultural Revolution and the destruction it did to the great heritage of Taoism, which was one of the most, if you study it, it's one of the most beautiful and peaceful types of spiritual systems in the world. And as I also said, Jane had visit us the family of a very, very famous Chinese man, which Chinese people and Taiwanese people would know about particularly, which is Sun Yat-sen. We had here Jane doing some trance work for some of the family, the great-grandparents, grandchildren of Sun Yat-sen. And all sorts of interesting stuff came through about that for the history of China, which maybe Jane would need to tell you. But his concern at the time was that China was trying to take over the world. And Jane said to me earlier today about this when I said I was going to do this talk today. But I don't think they will take over the world. I think we're going to see a turnaround soon. I think there may be also, the problem is when these things happen, and this is also something I think may happen too, if you've got an enemy within, you often try to draw the attention outside. So we see more troubles with Taiwan. And I think we will also see some potential aggression towards India from China, you know, particularly now India in some respects may be seen as being, particularly Pakistan, but India at the moment is being quite weakened by such terrible monsoon troubles, which have obviously on the news with Pakistan, but must clearly be damaging the infrastructure of India as well. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts, and I'm going to start taking some of your questions now, and we can open this up a little bit further if you like too, guys. So I'll get a few of the first hellos, and I'll just whip up to the top here. Just a few highs. Hi there. I won't say hello to each individually. I know a lot of you guys actually because you come in quite regularly. Hopefully end of CCP too soon. Yes. Yeah. And well, it will be. I mean, what will come out of China, actually, I think it will become a superpower. But as a superpower, which it is already, but as a superpower at the moment, it is a dangerous one. Who would want a superpower with a communist party in charge? And in fact, they call themselves a communist party. But if you compare that to the idealist ideas of someone like Karl Marx, it's hardly a communist party. It's quite the opposite. It's a I don't know how we would describe it. It's despots. I think it's probably a better word for it. But I think when democracy does blossom in China, together with its already advanced modern society growing, I think we'll see something that could become a very positive light for the world, but it's going to take some time. I think actually India is going to grow quicker than them, and we're going to see the growth of India over a period of time. This is something I've mentioned, and when we look at the television shots of India on screen, sometimes I think, how can it ever be? But I think there will be a great advance there as well as people move their productions and so forth away from outsourcing everything to China. I think we're going to see much more manufacturing come home, and we're beginning to see that. A few more hellos coming here. Hiya, guys. Yeah, I think most of us in the world now, don't we, feel, you say it's pretty sweet, you know, it's pretty it's quite a worrying thing, I think. Now let's have a look and see if we've got any of your questions. Yeah, I think Hong Kong will become more autonomous, just like Tibet will be. You know, I say both of them will be free nations. And Tibet, I think the Dalai Lama's dream is going to come true, you know, because he always envisioned a Tibet that was like an independent country, an independent spiritual country, not necessarily being run by the Dalai Lama and a religious sect, but becoming a spiritual force for the world, almost like a huge retreat. And he sees it as a kind of a sort of a garden, a giant garden, you know, a giant spiritual park that would be just left and used as a place of spiritual for all types, not just Tibetan Buddhism, but for all peoples. What are you supposed to say there? Just woke up and having a very large cup of coffee with my two cats. Actually, I didn't get time to make the coffee with Craig, so it was water with Craig today. I see what your opinions are there. I see we've got some of you guys in from Hong Kong too. I actually, strangely enough, I get quite a lot of people having readings with me from Hong Kong on the Zoom. So I don't know if any of my people have and readings will become. So let's have a look. We've got all. So any thoughts, guys? Any thoughts? What do you think about what I'm saying here? Do you think we are at a very important turning point, as I feel at the moment, or do you think I'm, is this just wishful thinking, or am I going off in the wrong direction with this? What will happen to their Belt and Road initiatives all over the world? The CCP has invested a lot of money and resources to gain influence in the third world. And you've got to constantly have more and more money to invest, haven't you? I know they're trying to build like a new Silk Road. They're trying to build lots of infrastructure around the world, and it has caveats to it, doesn't it? Because particularly we see them going into places like the Virgin Islands, Solomon Islands, isn't it? The Solomon Islands, and setting up bases. There's always a sort of carrot and stick, and the stick being we want to have bases there. I think Jane, when she said that China wants to dominate the world, is what they want to do. I find it incredible that we can that the other nations of the world can allow this to happen, and it just happened in front of our eyes. We're seeing them building bases all around the world, and we think, like, these guys are not going to be trouble. They're not going to be trouble. And then we see a weak America with weak leadership there at the moment. So their initiatives, I think, though, I think they're going to get in economic trouble in China at the moment. So I think their initiatives are going to weaken. I think their grandiose schemes are a bit of a hubris, aren't they, really? We often get the point where you see it so often with dictators in the world. Like Saddam Hussein, he decided to rebuild Babylon, and every brick of the ziggurats would have his name on them. He sees himself as the next great pharaoh type character. Wouldn't be quite the right word for that, but what I mean. He's and the same thing's happening with the hubris of China. I think that's going to cave in, and I think their influence in the third world, I'm hoping, and I think this will happen, I think other democracies in the world are going to sort of wake up to the dangers of not investing in other countries. And I think some of those tin pot dictators that take on the Chinese money and stuff it in their back pocket, I think we're going to see a lot of that falling too, because the money's going to run out. The money's going to run out from China. The money's going to run out around the world. And I think we're going to see a much more cautious investment and much more thought about what the long-term future is. So what I'm saying, I think, is quite optimistic. I think ultimately we will get through. This is interesting. Nostradamus predicted that the yellow people would take over the world at this time. What do you think? He predicted Hitler and the Antichrist. Yes. Whatever we mean by the Antichrist is a whole other topic, actually. But he certainly predicted Hitler, and he predicted Napoleon, didn't he? And he predicted Second World War. Nostradamus, incredible, a number of things. And he talked about, well, when we say the yellow people, that's one interpretation. He also talked about the rise of a great leader from the East, that who he saw as Mobus, or the Antichrist. And I don't think it has to be, I think there is the potential in every situation. And I think when we see things for the future, I think people like Nostradamus and any of us who look to the future and get glimpses, we don't see exactly what will happen. We see the potential. So I don't think we have to go down that route. I think we're going to see quite the opposite, actually. I think we're going to eventually see, I think things are going to get worse generally, particularly with the environment. And I think we're going to see serious problems coming ahead soon. And I think we have already seen in many ways the rise of the yellow people, as it were, and the dominance and the dangers that we already see with the influence of bad technology being put inside our nuclear power stations, for example, and things like that, which was happening here in the UK. The French are having to step in instead of the Chinese to build the new nuclear reactors they're talking about at Sizewell. So I think we've already seen that's already happened in many respects. Whether this next Chinese leader could be the dodgy one, I get the feeling we're gonna beat it. Actually, I think it could be. At this point, someone could arise in China with everything in place for a warfaring nature. You know, we've got instability in America, we've got instability in Europe, we've got dangerous situations in Taiwan, or we've got weakened countries. We've got Japan weakened as well, really. And then we start to find economic recession happening in China, just like Hitler, when he saw mass inflation going on in Germany. It was a good excuse to put all hands to the wheel to go to war. And we could even see that type of thing arising. But I get the feeling, I think somehow the Chinese people are going to stop it. I think something's going to happen. And that's why I feel we're at a kind of a very critical point at the moment. You know, it could go kind of in many ways either way. But I have a lot of hope, just like the way the people of Hong Kong stood up. Okay, they got squashed, but they'll stand again. You can't put a good man down. And I do feel that give me liberty or give me death. I think those things may occur again. And it won't take as much, I think, as they think to topple the Chinese Communist Party, frankly. I think, you know, often look at the way Russia fell when Gorbachev decided to let it happen. You know, one good man allowed it to happen, and the wall came down just like that overnight. And these things can happen very, very fast. So what was this one? Whatever your observation, fall of low-cost manufacturing in Chinese industries will wipe out West commerce and huge profits like Amazon, Walmart, Apple. Yes, it will. And good. Because what would happen, Vera, is kind of, I think, you know, when you get so many big businesses, so people have said, oh, the high street businesses are going bust and things like this. Well, actually, what usually happens is the smaller businesses can step in and supply things to us. And I think this is where the strength ultimately lies in commerce. I think you need a lot of, I'm a great believer in the small businessman and the small innovator. Because all the great things like Amazon and eBay and YouTube were all started as small little ventures by guys in garages and things like that, you know. And then they got out of hand, and the city comes in and turns it into monsters. But it's all the great innovations come from the small guys, not usually from the big organizations. They might have the money to throw at it, but often the brilliant ideas come when you've got no choice. You've got to find some way to survive with all these big dinosaurs around you, you know. And I think we will see, you know, we will see the collapse of the Chinese cheap goods. But that would mean that we would have to start building our own iPhones and start building our own medical equipment and the rest of it. All of it we're going to have to take from China, because another thing I find absolutely horrifying really is we worry about global warming, or whatever we want to call it, and if we are pumping lots of stuff into the atmosphere, where's that stuff pumping into the atmosphere? I don't see it around where I am, not much of it, you know. But I do know that when I empty my bin, or I used to empty, I think they've changed it now, but you used to they used to put all your nice garbage into the green bin. They then go and ship that to places like China and burn it there, you know. So basically we get someone else to do the dirty work for us. There's no carbon tax on these things. And China is still the greatest dirty man of the world, really. It's creating great deal of dreadful pollution. And yet, you know, why aren't we invested in the Rust Belt in America? Why aren't we invested in the north of England and the north of France and the rest of all those areas that could do with manufacturing coming back? You know, we're fools, aren't we? We're absolute fools. I see we've got some more comments. I'm going to skim down. Oh, I have loads of comments. Sorry, this system I got only shows coffee with Craig. Oh, I didn't have time to make a coffee. Then that's a catch. I'm in the middle of my 20s. Can I witness the end of the CCP before I become 40? Almost my family members are victims of the distorted Chinese society. I think you will. I can't pronounce your name, but I think you will. I think we're going to see it within. We're going to see it within my lifetime as well. So I think we're going to see it within the next. I think we might see it within the next 10 years, the complete transformation of China. But I think we're going to see the start of it very, very soon. Very soon. I think we're going to see it at the beginning of 2023, the end of 2022. I feel it really is upon us now. No, I don't think so, except perhaps for I know that the ancient relics of China went to Taiwan, which is supposed as a bit like the sword of that killed Christ, the spear, the holy spear that killed Christ. You know, it's like a symbolic thing of whoever holds that holds the power of the world. But I don't think we would. But maybe in a ceremonial type of thing, possibly. I haven't really thought it through, but I personally, I don't think I could see. I haven't seen anything of that happening. Although, saying that, one of the things I felt that would happen again in China. China's really, it's done like so much like the West has really lost our souls in the pursuit of material wealth, lost our souls in the search of cheap goods, and I always think the greatest when I read the old books of China, and you know, and there's some such beautiful work. If you read some, and I'm only able to read translations. I can't read what it must have been like in the original Chinese poetry and so forth. But from the great literature, and particularly some of the religious texts, the absolute beauty of the whole concept of Taoism. You know, this idea that there is. They say if you can describe the Tao, you've misunderstood it. But so I'm going to try to describe it. But the concept to me was that the Chinese idea was that there is this kind of like point of equilibrium, this point of balance, that in every situation, good or bad, there is always like the way. There is always like this point, this center of the cyclone. It's like the Dharma. It's like if we follow the path of truth, if we follow the path of our spiritual life, then all the supposed problems of the world actually disappear, and we start to see them as illusion, because we've got to the point of the true meaning of existence. So this was an idea. The Tao was very close to this idea of what I would call the Dharma, which again is almost impossible to express. But it's like the spiritual center of things. And it was very tied in with the love of nature too. You know, we get things like feng shui and things that come out of this concept as well. And the I Ching oracle comes out of all this, you know, because I use the I Ching a great deal in my email readings, because I find it helps me to perhaps read the qualities of the Tao at that particular time for that particular person, you know. And in the ancient Chinese used to make their decisions, political decisions, based upon what they could understand of what the Tao was at that time, i.e. they used the I Ching and other oracles to try to understand what the right conditions of the time were and what is the greatest wisdom and the wisest way to act. So I think when we see the end of the Chinese Communist Party with its gross materialism, we will see a rebirth again of that great wisdom of China, you know, and that is the saddest thing of all. You know, that is the saddest thing of all, because, you know, people have lost their freedom there. They've lost their understanding of the world in seeing it all in materialistic, narrow-minded, narrow view of the world. You know, and really, if they could rediscover the Tao, then there would be not only hope for China, but there would be massive hope for all of us, because these are the great teachings akin to the great teachings of India and ancient Greece and the rest of the great knowledges in Egypt that we'd lost. What we got there, I just weak, spelt wrong. Brown is not the word I'd use. Biden has spent half of his term on vacation. Not that we miss the man. We know the cabal is directing our agenda. Biden is just the puppet. Yeah, okay, they're going off in that direction. I do agree. I think the man is, to me, it seems to just be like a puppet-like figure. I mean, when we watch him, he never seems to speak from his heart, or never seems to speak for himself, and seems to be badly reading off the monitors and keeping to the script. That's why I think, you know, we do need stronger leadership, but at the same time, we don't want the sort of strong leadership that leads to rampant nationalism, do we? loads of comments here. I'm grabbing them as they come, so I haven't got a lot of time to read a lot of them. Another thought from Alexandra. I like your comments, Alexandra. I watch out for yours sometimes. Amazon has taken over Whole Foods here. A beloved health food chain in US started as one small store 25 years ago. Yeah, isn't it horrible? I mean, fish and chips, the same thing here in the UK. I mean, Jane and I found a lovely little fish and chip shop the other day, and we thought, this is so nice. It's all done properly. They come out and they look after you, and they put the tablecloth on and everything like that. It was a sit down one, I thought, oh, this is nice. This is like it was in the 1950s. I said, oh, what a lovely organization you are. It's so nice. We'll come again. Well, we've just been bought out, said the woman. And she named a big group that had just bought them out. And I thought, oh my God, there goes another little tiny bit of niceties that makes up what I think makes England a good place. And exactly the same thing with you in America, those little beloved health food chains all being gobbled up by these horrible, horrible international companies. So I think if we could see the end of that, and maybe the demise of China might be one way to see that stop somehow. Because we put all our eggs in one basket with it all, haven't we? I mean, it's all very well having one big place to go and shop, like Amazon, for example. And I'm bad as anybody else. I buy from there because I think I know they're not going to nick my card details. I know I'm not going to get bombarded with spam emails if I buy from them and so forth. But we're all giving them the power, which means the little guy can't survive. So, and the thing as I've said it before, the thing I don't like about companies like Amazon or anywhere is I would like to see where I'm buying from. I would like to see a little English flag or an American flag or a Chinese flag. So if I've got a choice between this product or that product and they're much the same, I could probably say to myself, well, actually, I'll buy that one from a democratic country or a country that I feel more comfortable with, rather than perhaps if it was manufactured with child labor somewhere. So I think that's something I think we should have much more of. And one of the earlier recessions in Britain, we used to have "I'm backing Britain" and stickers with British flags on. We weren't allowed to do that once we joined the EU. But that sort of thing, I think, would be very, very helpful to know the countries of origin, wouldn't it? China's always been a country with a big information problem where the emperor cannot figure out what is going on at the grassroots level. Yeah, well, that's true. China wasn't always China as we know it either, because China was its providences for many, many, many centuries, for most of its history. In fact, and I think one of the things that might happen with China, and this is something I feel, that could happen after we've seen what I feel is going to happen, the revolution in China, as it were. I think the breakup of China would be kind of more beneficial. They used to war between themselves, just like Europe used to war between itself. But it would be better, I think, if China broke up into its smaller provinces again, or smaller parts, because I think it's when we start getting everything on a big scale, when we've only got one search engine like Google, when we've only got one place to go to watch YouTube types things, there's very little competition out there. We thrive better when we've got the small guys can get a chance, and I think we might see in China a break up into the provinces, and this is where places like Hong Kong would come into their own again. Let's grab a few more. Well, I think there would be a big war inside China. I think if any form of revolution came, look what they did with Tiananmen Square. They stomped on it, didn't they? They absolutely stomped on it. And I think that would be the initial reaction. But it depends on the scale of it, doesn't it? It's quite easy to stomp on little Hong Kong. But what if we started seeing bigger rumbles? What if we started seeing news getting out about what's really going on in China with the Uyghurs, for example? What if the people of China actually was able to get to know the truth more? I think it would be harder to stomp on it. you know. But they're doing the same in Russia, of course. They're keeping the Russian people are kept in the dark all the time about what's really going on in Ukraine. And even here, we're kept in the dark. When I watch the mainstream news, I think, well, this is completely different to what I've seen elsewhere. And, you know, you have to actually do your research nowadays to get any real news and knowledge about what's going on. But I think we will see, it won't be all love and light, but I don't think it would be as bad as the terrible things that happened with the Long March and the Cultural Revolution and so on. I don't think it's going to be that scale. I remember saying this in my early predictions, because I said I felt it would happen, but I felt it wouldn't be bloodless, but it wouldn't be as vicious as what we've seen in other revolutions. I think I get the sense it's going to be kind of like, almost like a quiet revolution, you know, like the way it happened in Hong Kong, you know, where they all carry umbrellas, you know. I mean, that was kind of a very powerful force, that. And that is just, so I get strong feelings like that. What's this one saying? Well said, great predictions. May all what Craig predicted today come true. Lots of prayers from Taiwan. Yeah, well, obviously, all our thoughts go out to Taiwan, because I mean, it must be very, very worrying. I mean, I've done readings from a few people from Taiwan, and so I've got a little bit of, it's funny, a little bit of a feel about what people on the ground feel about situations. I think as a psychic, actually, you probably get a greater, particularly if you're doing international readings, like I tend to do, you get a greater feeling about what's going on in the world, because you're talking to the actual people on the ground. So it becomes quite an interesting insight. I don't know if anybody really, and many other people really get to talk to people, because as a psychic, you obviously talk to people on a very personal level. And often, sometimes you get a time to have a little chat afterwards, after the reading's finished. And yeah, it's quite interesting to hear what's going on. But I know the fear in Taiwan at the moment. But I think I also feel the resolution of Taiwan, and that you're never going to go the way of heading towards becoming some satellite part of China, you know. Okay, well, a couple more just to see where we're going. The world as a whole is about to change. We'll be in a much better place in 12 months' time. Not quite. I think it's not going to be as quick as that, Ford. I think we're going to see, I think 2024, I think is kind of, I get the sense that's going to be a kind of a bit of a turning point. I think it will be kind of a difficult time. I get the sense something around that time, something's going to happen. I don't know quite what yet, because sometimes I start to get a feel about things. But 2024 is a time that I think there could be a great deal of distress in the air, but also a great deal of hope. But that's just all I've got for that at the moment, because, you know, I'd love to be able to see it all. But I often say when I do these, it's a bit like the biblical phrase, through a mirror darkly, you know, and through a glass darkly, the actual phrase I think is, but it's like through a mirror. You get a little bit of you can see it, you can see bits of it, you get some feel of it, you get the big picture, but you're not quite sure of the detail. And of course you're not, because it's not completely formulated yet. These are still things kind of growing in potential. I almost see them like a hothouse for the future, potential things that are going to happen, but some of them may flourish and some of them may not. But I think we've always got to keep in a very hopeful mindset, knowing that, you know, ultimately, you know, the world around us, this material world around us, is not the real thing. The real thing is consciousness. We live in a kind of an illusion. The Matrix was a very good way of mythologically sort of explaining these things, a modern myth, I suppose, a modern allegory. But our consciousness is what we're here for, you know. My absolute knowledge and certainty that there's an afterlife, for example, you know, I mean, my lifetime working as a medium, I know there's an afterlife, and that means that my consciousness will continue after this world, that this world is just one part of a much, much, much greater reality. And I know also that there's the spirit world is only the tip of the iceberg of an even greater existence, that we would probably describe as beyond death, but where our consciousness is capable of going. And the material world is just a hothouse. It's just a place where we come to learn and grow, and we get distracted by all these worries about the world and everything. But it's here for a specific purpose. Its consciousness is set it up. We're not a result of evolution. Evolution is developed so that our consciousness can have a place to go, and where we can learn and develop and grow. And I think if we look at it that way, we need to look at it that way round, and realize that we have in our power this incredible power of consciousness. I mean, you see a lot of people out there talk about, visualizing abundance and it comes to you and things like that. Of course, that don't work because you're using it for the wrong power. You're using it to try to influence the material world. But if you can use your consciousness to become more conscious, to become more spiritually minded, things will naturally fall into place because they're all there to support the consciousness itself. Not to make us rich or poor or things. They're there to support the consciousness. So all these things of the world are secondary. And I think get yourself focused on where you should be. And just to reference again ancient China, the idea of the Tao, the idea that in all situations there is like this golden thread that runs through it, like the thread through the Minotaur's maze. There's always a way through, and we only have to keep looking and getting ourselves aligned with what I would call the Tao, with the higher spiritual vibration, with the center, as it were. And if we can keep ourselves and keep our consciousness centered on the Dharma, on the truth, then nothing can harm us, actually, because everything will glance off. We would come, each of us individually can become kind of superhuman beings, because each of us is capable of that. And actually, that is the essence of our being. That is where we are. That is the tightrope that we walk through this world, and we can't fall off it because that is the very core of our being. Anyway, I'm going to have to finish now, I think, guys. Loads and loads of comments. So I'm going to be saying goodbye to you guys now. I'm seeing a few of you saying a few hellos and goodbyes. So it's nice to see you. Lots of people from all over the world today again. Just see it, just flicking up a few. Yeah, that's true. And yin and yangs you're talking about there. That's true. And it's between the yin and the yang. It's neither. You see, Taoism developed that idea of yin and yang, came out of the idea of Taoism. The great gift that China gave the world. That's something perhaps we should all go and look at again, and understand that that there's this incredible teaching from China, that the greatest export of all was their Taoism, and yet we never look at it. Go and read a few books about it. Go and watch a few videos about it, perhaps, because there's quite a bit on YouTube on it as well. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye there. Stick up a few little advert at the end. If you're interested in this channel, do follow me, because we need some more followers. It'd be nice to get a load more followers, guys. So follow the channel, click that little bell thing in the corner of the screen, give us a like, as they say. This is the great mantra of YouTube: like us and follow us. And if go and have a look at our website at psychics.co.uk too, if you're interested in getting readings. And I will be also, you can contact me, I'm also doing Nadi readings on there now too, for those that have know about that and been following me on that. Okay, see you soon. Bye for now.
They're the real deal, and they're really sweet. Like, you can tell they come from a place of love, which is very endearing.
I know. A charlatan, and especially in Los Angeles, when you're meeting shady people, these guys are the real deal, no doubt. Yeah.
Everything about the reading was just spot on, down to the colour. She gave the colour blue, which was very prominent because we wore blue to the funeral, and it was his favourite colour. So I've seen a lot of mediums before. I was very impressed with them.
Very, very good connection. I couldn't believe the connection I got tonight.
We're definitely talking to our loved ones.
Mm-hmm. He said about the photograph, well, I had all them, and he said to me, "You've got that in your bag." And I did. I had everything in my bag, they said. When I went outside for a break, and I said to Carol, they know things that nobody else knows.
Now, where was I at the back there?
She was spot on. Everything was right. It all meant a lot to me. She had my father's name, everything, things about my brother. There's been problems with my brother, and I'm so glad to hear of them both. My father, he was doing this, I'm just glad he's friends with me, because things happened. Now it's all just a bit emotional.